Hello, good evening, and welcome to Simulating Solutions, the art, science, and sustainability of the tabletop board game Daybreak. This is brought to you by Pacific Northwest Climate Week 2026, an event that's happening right now in 6 cities along the I-5 corridor. It continues into Sunday, July 19th. If you'd like to see what events you can still attend, please go to pnwclimateweek.org. My name is Korby Sears, and I am a Seattle-based tabletop game producer. I will be your co-host along with Syris Valentine. Syris Valentine is a climate journalist based in Seattle. He's been published in such publications as Scientific American, Grist, Yes Magazine, and South Sound Emeralds. Hello, Syris.
Hello. How you doing?
Doing good. Our guest, Matt Leacock, is a game designer who's created such modern classics as Pandemic and Forbidden Island, games that have become empires with their sequels and expansions. He is also a co-designer and co-creator of Daybreak. Welcome, Matt Leacock.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And finally, Ruth Meza. Ruth Meza is a transportation planner with the Oakland Department of Transportation. She's served as a sustainability consultant for the game Daybreak. Welcome, Ruth.
Hello there.
So, Daybreak was published by CMYK in 2023. It is a cooperative game where we play as different countries that are using local projects and global projects to bring down our carbon emissions while bringing up our renewable energy and tending to the natural way that carbon is sequestered on planet Earth, including forests and oceans, and also trying to make sure that there's temperature does not raise by 2 degrees Celsius. So, you know, no big deal. Just a Tuesday's worth of work. Matt, I want to start with you. I'm curious about the origin of this game, about where it came from, if it was you, if it's CMYK. I think that it's obvious that you would make a game like this because you're the guy when it comes to, you know, large-scale emergency situations. But I think making a game is one thing. Making a game based on real-life issues with real-life science and real-life public policy, that seems like a whole other level of production. So where did the idea for this come from?
It started back in the spring of 2020. I think it was like right during lockdown, and I was thinking about trying to do something a little bit more meaningful. I think a lot of us in lockdown were re-examining our lives a little bit. So I had also been asked by a climate scientist, Declan Finney out of Scotland. He suggested I create a version of Pandemic based on the climate crisis months before, and I didn't know how I could do that with the Pandemic engine, but the idea sat in the back of my head. And then I met my co-designer, Matteo Menapace, on Twitter, of all things. He had seen a story I had written up about what the pandemic can teach us, what Pandemic can teach us about the pandemic. I had done a op-ed for the New York Times, and he saw that. And we just started an exchange on Twitter, and we found out that we had similar goals. We wanted to design a game about the climate crisis. So we started from that conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting. Pandemic, for those who know Pandemic and Daybreak share almost no DNA as far as the mechanics. It is a completely different game for sure.
Yeah, it seemed like a bit of a stretch to try to take that engine and model what was going on. Yeah, if I was going to do it, I wanted to do something that, you know, actually was true to life. More so.
Ruth, at what point were you brought in? Did you know Matt before?
No, not at all. I was a a graduate student at UC Berkeley at the time, and somehow Matt may have connected with my teacher, a professor there, who
likely CMYK reached out, I'm guessing.
Oh, okay. Someone reached out to a professor there who did a lot of research on life cycle analysis. And since that was a class that I was taking and also research that I was doing, he put the pitch out to that small cohort, and I guess I was one of the few people who were really interested.
Are you a gamer at all? Do you play games?
I do, yeah. Not a lot, but you know, I love board games, so yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about what you do for the Transportation Department in Oakland?
Yeah, so I'm a transportation planner in a division called the Major Projects Division. And so I work very closely with engineers to make our streets safer. So a lot of the work that I do is work in the community to talk to them about what problems they see, how they want their streets to look, and what safety issues exist today. And then I work with the engineers to make sure the design reflects what community wants. So it helps make it safer. It helps make it nicer to walk and bike, which ultimately leads to less cars on the road, hopefully, which is better for our climate. So yeah, that's what I do.
Matt, could you give us a general overview of the game, just a bird's eye view of the major systems that are at play?
Yeah, right, sure. So in Daybreak, it's a fully cooperative game for 1 to 4 players, and each player represents a world power of some sort. So you might play as the United States or Europe or China, or what we're calling the majority world, essentially the global South. And the object of the game is to reach drawdown, meaning the amount of emissions that you're generating is less than what the Earth's natural systems can absorb. So you want to get to this magical point. And in order to do that, you spend a lot of energy and cards in the form of cards, rolling out policies and technologies to do 2 main things. One is to decarbonize your economy. So you pull away dirty energy and you roll out green energy. In that image, you can see that total needs to meet your energy demand. That's that little blue house.
Mm-hmm.
So you gotta make sure you're producing clean energy and decarbonizing, as well as like decarbonizing various sectors of your economy, whether it's buildings or industry or automotive and so on. So that's the one side where you're mitigating. The other side is you also need to take care of your people. We try to put communities at the center of the game. So you're rolling out different solutions that increase your people's resilience, and those are represented as shields. So over the course of play, disasters can happen, whether they're climate events or other political events can happen, and those put your communities in crisis. So the more resilient your society is, the more you can bear those burdens. So you need to mitigate and adapt at the same time, draw down your carbon while also building up resilience. And if you can balance that with the cards you're given while working together with the other world powers, then you can win the game.
I just want to show a few of the crisis cards that can occur, some of the things that you're battling and what they can do here. You have sea levels rise, forest fires.
Yeah, many of these crises get exacerbated by the rising temperature. So if you see those per 0.1 degree Celsius, so the higher the temperature in the game, the worse these disasters get, and the more resilience you need in order to protect your people.
There's also global projects that we can collaborate on. These are some projects that all the countries can feed. It takes these, and they are global effects, mechanics that happen throughout the game. But it takes all the players to add these different cards on the side to sort of feed these.
Yeah, the beginning of every round begins with a conversation with the other players. You've got a couple opportunities, or an opportunity to choose between different initiatives that need to be kind of like funded by all the players collectively, or it's some sort of group project. You can think of it as like a little mini conference or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you pick one of those and roll it out, and then it's up to the players to decide how they want to make it happen. It's funny, when we were developing the game, we needed to break this up as a separate step and put it right up front on the turn, because once we gave players their cards, they had this tunnel vision. They would only only focus on their own boards. So we actually structured the interaction pretty strongly, and that seemed to work pretty well.
Yeah, it should be said that there are no real turns. There are rounds, and there are functions within the game in which countries can collaborate with each other and support each other for sure.
Yeah, it's a very free-form experience. It's a cooperative game, but everybody has their own player board, and you're all worrying about your own like energy demand and your own your own needs, and you've got a tableau of cards and so on. So there's quite a bit of agency for each of the different players. But if all you do is focus only in on your own board and you don't cooperate with the other players, you tend to do far worse. So if you actually want to win the game, you'll find that playing to your strengths, having each player play to their strengths is a big advantage. And every player starts out like with an asymmetrical set of cards. So
Yeah, right here we're seeing Europe, the initial projects, local projects that Europe can do. I want to talk about this system because this kind of is the heart of it, and it's kind of what fun is actually. It's a neat little system that we have here. At the bottom of all of these cards, we have these functions. At the top, we have these icons that essentially are something of an economy. This thing over here that is the money represents an incentive. The middle one for reforestation represents ecology. I have a sample here, like if you draw this card that has a function about removing your waste reduction, it also has these icons up top. There's so many ways in which these things can be played. I mean, you can put it behind another card and support it, in this sense that this dirty electric phase out is supported by the two money icons for incentive, which sort of doubles the function of the one in the front. But you could also put the card behind reforestation, which now activates it because it needs two of these ecology icons to then put a tree out, which is very important for carbon sequestering. Or you can put it in front, and because it needs to be powered by two ecologies. This part of it was really fun for Syris and I. It's interesting because at first you're like, you're a little overwhelmed. It's like there's so much to do, but then after a while, it's sort of like analysis paralysis turns into optimism. It's like, oh, there's so much to do. You know,
Yeah.
This is kind of what games do, is sort of put you in the driver's seat of a situation you haven't been in before, and lets you empathetically understand how it works, right?
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, like the game is kind of like two competing positive feedback loops in a sense. You've got the climate, and things are getting worse as the temperature gets hotter. Things continue to exacerbate, right? That's the challenge to overcome that positive feedback loop. But there's also this other one where, as you roll out your projects, they get stronger, and
Yes.
they get even stronger, and it's in a non-linear way. You can see effectively the cost of green energy like approaching zero as you play, and if you roll out a very large stack of cards in your solar segment of your economy, for example. And that feels really powerful. And I think that's where a lot of the fun comes from. You can see that roll out over time. And it's kind of fun to kind of relate that to what's going on now in solar and wind and batteries, and see that actually happen.
I mean, Ruth, one of the things that were really fascinating to Syris and I was the numbers for everything. We're like, how did they come up with this? How did they come up with the starting numbers for each country? How did they come up with the numbers for what the costs are? I mean, I should point out that for all of these cards, there is a QR code that goes to the website and does a great job of talking about the technology that's behind the card. But the costs are very interesting too. I mean, here's hydroelectric energy. Everybody loves that, but it does cost you some ecological resilience here, because there is some things that we have to pay for these things to happen. How did you come up with the numbers for all of these? How did you come up with the costs for all of these? I mean, this is a very large conversation to make it fit. Or I guess another way is, Matt, did you have mechanics already and then you brought those to Ruth to see how they would fit, or did Ruth inform you about what's going on and you went the other way around?
Well, I should say that Ruth actually consulted, and you can speak to this, I'm sure, better than I can. Ruth, more on the actual product, the physical product's sustainability, less so on the way the mechanisms worked.
Oh, I see. On the FCS certification of it?
Right. The actual physical production, there was definitely an impact on the final product based on conversations we had. I mean, one example I remember very vividly was, Ruth, you might remember this, talking about how the cloth bag was just really not a great solution when it came to making a sustainable product.
Yeah, exactly. I've worked more on what products should be used to make the bag and where they should be sourced from, not so much the mechanics of the game. But I think, yeah, probably some of the source of the information might have been used. We definitely looked at all kinds of energy sources for for different countries. Yeah,
I can say that Matteo and I went to sources like, first we started with sources like Project Drawdown, a number of books, and then we started reaching out to the book's authors to get input from them. And pretty soon we had people from our sources actually playtesting, and then it wasn't too long before they were writing content for us. So that was extremely rewarding. Working with Project Drawdown, working with the Red Cross, Crescent Climate Center in particular. Those two just provided a tremendous amount of time, energy, resources, playtesting. So, and really helped steer the direction of it. Like early on, Matteo and I had a game that was really all about mitigation. It was, as one of our advisors put, it was just a war on the carbon atom. It wasn't really looking at the deeper notions of what's involved in the crisis. And so, by focusing on people and resilience and adding that as a whole subsection of the game, we were able to make a much richer set of policies, and the game just really came to life after we had done that. And there's no way we would have done that without actually talking with these experts.
That's fascinating that you shifted from that war on the carbon atom to this, like what you were saying was like more community focused approach and like thinking about resilience. When it came after you were having those conversations and it came to sort of translating those conversations and the mechanics of a tabletop board game, were there any like limitations you faced? Like how did you go about balancing like the realism of the climate crisis and its many solutions with like the limitations of a tabletop
well,
game?
I mean, as you can imagine, it's a lot. Like early versions of the game would take like 4.5, 5 hours. And
Oh, wow.
I had playtesters who were just on camera proving to me that it was impossible to win the game if they planned every single move out. So it took a while to kind of chop through all of that. We did find that a lot of the time involved was around like managing currencies. We had a couple different currencies in the game. And so one of our breakthroughs was really just kind of chipping away everything that really didn't matter. So we took out this notion of financial capital and political power and replaced it with cards as currency, which you can think of as a certain number of opportunities you have every round. In fact, those cards used to be called opportunity cards because you have so many to spend each round. And that created delicious trade-offs between how do you want to spend this card? Do you want to burn it to invest more in one of these existing projects or run your or to make another one more powerful, or do you want to shift gears and roll it in another project? And that's where a lot of those agonizing decisions come from. And so it really brought the game to life. The other trade-off was just like, how much do we want to model? I mean, like, do we put methane in the game, right? What technologies do we list out? Which policies do we list out? Which ones are most important? We wanted to show lots of different sectors, but how many? Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I wondered if there's been talk of like a Daybreak Junior, which is kind of another way of asking. I wondered how concerned the publisher was about the complexity level, because depending on what you're looking at, if you want this to be a mass game, I could see dialing the complexity down. But it's also a situation where if people really need to feel how it is, it needs the complexity it needs, right?
Yeah, it's a tricky balance for sure. CMYK was wonderful. They came in looking for a climate game from the get-go. They had asked Elizabeth Hargrave of Wingspan fame to see if she would design a climate game for them. And she said she didn't know how to make that fun, but I had already asked her if she wanted to work on a climate game. so she directed them to me. And some of them are Justin Vickers, one of their co-founders, actually works in the climate space, was really quite knowledgeable, and we helped develop the game as well. So we worked very closely with them, and so it was nothing like throwing the game over the wall. They're deeply involved in playtesting, and that helped. And then Alex Haig, who did a lot of the product design, deeply invested in all this stuff as well. So I think it really shows in the final product.
Yeah, I mean, the game is fun. Syris and I both got to that immediately. I actually played about 20 solo games before I brought it to Syris and us play it. I won 2 times.
Wow, okay.
So I can say that, I brought the Earth's carbon emission down. I've done it. I mean, it's game form, but I've done it. I mean, it feels good, I was going to bring up a particular situation, and I think Syris knows what I'm going to talk about here.
Oh, yeah.
So he and I, on our first game, when you play this game, you start each round by bringing out 2 global projects. Choose one, and this is universal for everybody. These are the first 2 that came out in our first game.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So and the 2 games that I won, I believe the global solar radiation management was key to me winning. So
really? Oh
this
my
is-
God.
well,
Okay.
I'll tell you why. I think that this is so just so people can see and understand the mechanics here at play. I mean, this is about the temperature bands, and it temporarily brings the temperature bands down. If you feed it with some cards, there is a die roll. It doesn't happen automatically. You have to roll for it. If you feed it with some cards, it increases a number to your die roll. It can bring the temperature bands down. It might add some crisis cards, which is an issue. Anyway, it came out. I believe it was part of my success on the 2 wins. It came out. I was like, Syris, we're doing this. Let's do this. Syris looked at it, said global solar radiation management. He said, we're not doing that.
Right.
I was like, why? He said, I know the science. I've done stories on this. We're not doing this. This is like emergent technology. It only has like 5% support. We're not doing this. And I was like, but it's such a great gamble. And he's like, there's a reason why they made it a gamble.
Those 2 crisis cards may be no joke in there.
Yeah, oh, honestly.
Syris, do you want to say a little bit about the global solar radiation management? And by the way, here's what's interesting. QR code right there, scan it. It goes to your website. There's text about it. And it says, this is emergent and controversial technology. It is not everyone's behind it. So the game is honest about it. I just think it's interesting that this, and as we played along, Syris was also finding a few other cards. He's like, this isn't, there's about a 5% of what I would call, just experimental approaches in technology and science.
Yeah.
I'm wondering about what the editorial process was on this. Obviously, the team felt the need to put some of these things in there, and for reasons.
Yeah, I'd love to speak to that. Yeah. So I can tell you that we spent hours on that one card. There's also a project card. Oh yeah, with experts on these technologies, and trying to figure out. Well, for the first discussion is like, do you put the card in the game at all, right? But we didn't want to be super preachy about it and say like, we know the best way. So what we thought would be better would be to put the card in there so that you could actually internalize the trade-offs yourself by playing the game, and go, if you do roll low and lose the game because you've got those additional crises, after realizing that, oh wait, this is temporary and I have to invest in this every single round for it to pay off.
You got
right. That way you actually learn. But to your point, Korby, there may be some games where very late you just need to buy a little bit of time. You invest a little bit of money, you roll the dice because, oh my God, what else are we going to do? And then you might win or you might not, right? But you understand how the card works. And it might be put up against another global project that doesn't necessarily make sense for your situation. So trying to figure out how to model this card, by like investing a lot in the research there, still having the trade-offs, and making it work, and deciding to include it, because there are other technologies that we wouldn't necessarily consider quite as controversial, like nuclear power. Like Germany did, they don't think real highly of those cards, but it wasn't like we were going to say this doesn't exist. We wanted people to play with it and understand that, oh yeah, this costs a little bit more. There's a lot more regulatory investment that's required, and it's slower to, all these kinds of things. So that was our approach.
Well, just so you know, Syris said we're going with this, the loss and damage fund, which ended up mitigating our global crises in a very macho way. We were very surprised. Mitigation was happening really well. Matter of fact, it's through this card that I learned what the International Loss and Damage Fund was. It was created in 2022 at the COP convention in Egypt. It's sort of like an international, not really insurance, but it's sort of a fund that all countries are feeding into to address any issues that happen around the world on a climate basis. I know the U.S. pulled out in 2025. So I learned about that through this card, but it helped us in the game.
Yeah,
our friends at the Red Crescent Climate Center would be so happy to hear that.
Yeah, the loss and damage fund is huge. I was a big proponent of that, just with like all the reporting that I have done and just all the like reading that I've done, even outside of my own reporting. I'm a big personally like fan of loss and damage fund, and constantly irritated when the United States and then other people who are following United States' role and leadership are like, no, we're just not going to put money into this, despite the fact that it is hugely important for like the global South in particular, and making sure that they're like able to adapt and cope with the challenges of the climate crisis that they're sort of exposed to first and foremost, like way more than we are here in the States, even with all the like floods and hurricanes and fires and whatnot that we're exposed to directly. But yeah, the way that the mechanism for global solar radiation management sort of turned out is like fascinating to me, especially because it is that huge gamble with Duke getting those like crisis cards. One of the things that I am curious about, I haven't actually played a game where I have used it outside of like playing with Korby in our second game where we didn't get the global one, but he got a local project and he was like, I'm doing it. And I think we got one crisis from that. But yeah, one of the things I'm curious about is like the sort of how this rolls out in terms of like in terms of the crises that you might get from it, or that you most likely will get from it, is how that ends up shaking out, whether they're like global impacts or like, because I know that there are certain crisis cards that can impact like whoever has like the lowest social resilience or lowest ecological resilience. Because a lot of this, it seems like when we, at least based on modeling that's done around solar radiation management, so much of it is like, if we cool the United States, then you might mess with the monsoon season in India, or like cause a drought in Africa, or like, so it's like interesting. I don't know, I'd be curious.
Right, exactly. I mean, if we had modeled it all the way, you could have those asymmetrical kind of effects. As it was, we have like this footprint of a single card to kind of capture this whole technology. So we weren't able to be quite that specific.
Couldn't give a specific crisis to China or majority world.
Right. We had to kind of rely on the existing crisis system we had. Otherwise, we have to add another few pages to the rule book for just that one card.
For sure. That makes sense.
Did the two of you happen to have any favorite project cards, local project cards, or global project cards?
Trying to think of favorite ones. I really like the really big solar and wind projects because they scale up so big. They just have these massive effects. Those are fun.
Ruth, did you have any that were favorites?
No.
Matt, I was wondering about the play testing process. You mentioned that a little bit. Was there anything surprising that came out of that, or were there any moments where things just sort of got locked up and you realized you had to go a different direction?
Well, I mentioned just how long the game took and the turn we had to take in simplifying it. When we began the game, everybody started with a whiteboard, in fact, rather than a chip, tokens on a player board, and it was just a lot of math. You're just doing tons and tons of math. So that changing that was a big breakthrough. But I would say that it was basically just 3 years of really incremental improvements with lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of people. The more people we could put it in front of, the better. And it's great to get a mix of experts from lots of different specialties as well, because they could speak to their cards. But I don't think, aside from that one breakthrough when we changed the currencies, there weren't too many other like big ahas. Although I would say that the stacking, when that really started to sing, like early on, I don't know if you're familiar with the game Terraforming Mars, but it's another engine building game. So this game started out a lot more similar to that, where you'd buy a card, you would get its effect. It was a one-time kind of thing, and it sat kind of dead on the table. And we started to think about ways the cards could interact. But then you've got this overwhelming array of options. It's just too much for any one brain to manage. So then we constrained you to, like, you could have 5 different like areas of development at a time. And we just started to see how that stacking could work. And that was really a powerful moment when we were able to kind of like lean into that. And I would say the other big one was really working with those experts on resilience and being able to see how something like universal healthcare could be seen as a climate solution because it builds up social resilience. Suddenly we're looking, it was fun for us as just people interested in the topic as well. We could see how all these different types of programs could be thought of as climate solutions because they built up resilience in addition to just mitigating carbon.
Has there been any like partnerships with high schools or universities on this?
Yeah, there's I think there's a woman right now in Germany who's adapting the game for use in classrooms. I've heard of a lot of different approaches for adapting it. I mean, it's a pretty big game, so you're not going to fit this into a 1-hour classroom period.
Yeah, that's true.
But I've heard everything from like students kind of coming up with their own solutions based on research, creating their own cards, bringing it to their teacher in order to get it approved into the games that they play,
Oh, wow.
up on a whiteboard, which sounds really exciting and fun. Simplified versions where you've got different tables or the different role powers, where you get different students collaborating as one of them and making proposals and so on. So, and then I would say, let's see, Matteo is actually working on a card game version right now, kind of a simplified
Oh,
version
wow.
that he's kind of codenamed Dawn. So after Daybreak, you've got Dawn. So we'll see. That would probably be more suitable for classrooms because you could fit it in a much tighter.
Is it still using the local projects mechanic? Are you still doing?
No,
the
it's
engine
just
building?
it's a card game. So you get rid of the player boards and you get rid of the main board, and you're basically just rolling out different solutions that like reduce your emissions and increase resilience. And there's a common thermometer I think that you're using with a little whiteboard marker. So he's I'm not sure what because he's still in prototype stage, but we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, that's great. I was also interested about the aesthetics of the game. I think it was, here's pandemic, which is very much alarm. Things are happening that are emergency. We must address them, and then. But Daybreak, I feel like, is it's like springtime in Miami. Like there's something very optimistic about it. I remember seeing this in a game store and not even knowing what it was yet, but it looks like, that looks great. That looks like a vacation I want to go on. Can you tell me a little bit about those decisions, about who did the design?
Yeah, sure. I mean, tons of credit to excuse me, Alex Haig on that for really doing the creative direction on it. He assembled a group of, I think it's 14 illustrators and a couple of graphic designers pulling that together. And
wow.
really, really strong creative. We wanted to get representation from all parts of the world. So there's illustrators from all the different regions that we represent in the game. And I think a game's so much better for it. I mean, you look at it, and many of these folks have not illustrated for board games, and so you don't get these. It doesn't have that kind of generic board game look, as it were.
Yeah.
It looks fresh and alive, and we really wanted to show that there was, there is a possible future. There is hope. This is, you can win this game, right? And so we wanted to bring that through because already you're dragging out a game that's, let's have fun. Let's play a game about the climate crisis. I mean, this is
I know.
maybe a way to ruin a dinner party, right? But that was another one of the things that Matteo and I agreed on right away, was that we wanted the game to be fun first, realistic, I guess you could say, but not educational. So air quotes educational. You know what I mean? Like we didn't want it to be pigeonholed as an educational game.
Not an educational vibe.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Not like, hey, we're gonna shove some, chocolate covered broccoli down your throat and tell you it's, delicious. It's more like, hey, let's play this game. It's really fun, and then sort of in the back door, you're learning all this terminology and all about these systems and so on.
Yeah. I'm curious because you mentioned right there that you wanted the game to both be fun and also to be like to some degree optimistic and hopeful. And as Korby was pointing to, like the sort of aesthetics reflect that. But the game is also like very hard to win, and you're also dealing with these global crises and whatnot. And the first time that I played it with my girlfriend, she was like, "This game is depressing." So are you ever are you ever concerned about people playing this game, experiencing how hard it can be, at least your first go through, and walking away with like the wrong lesson?
It's such a tricky line to walk. I mean, because so many different people come to the game with different levels of game literacy. So we also had to be careful that as a hobby gamer, you didn't pick it up and just like find the thing like super easy, right? If you played games like this or engine building games like this and win right away, that's not a great message either. So basically our strategy was to include a pack of challenge cards that can make the game easier. It can make it harder. So you can kind of roll your own to some extent. But we wanted it to be, to actually show how difficult it is. So we wanted that baseline difficulty to be at an appropriate place.
Yeah.
And then hope that if you did lose, you could see, oh, I see how we can play better the next time, and then want to play again rather than just, feel super depressed and never want to play it again.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I will say my girlfriend has played like 2 more times, I think, since then, and will be playing again. So
Oh,
she's
great.
not totally throwing her hands up in despair, but it was interesting.
Yeah,
that-
I mean, if you feel like the game is crushingly hard and you can't learn and you can't do better next time, then we've definitely failed as game designers.
that makes
Yeah,
sense.
I mean, by nature, cooperative games should be about a 30-70, maybe 20-80 win-loss rate. I mean, you want people to, it's kind of like what you just said. You want people to come back and think about, what did I not do right the first time? If you can win a cooperative game the first time, you'll never play it again. But this is a subject where that makes sense, that we have to keep trying with different ways to make it to solve it. So
Absolutely. I do want to, related sort of to the aesthetics and the design of the game, I do want to come back to you, Ruth, and hear from you a little bit more about, because right there, obviously this is a game about climate change, climate solutions, and the design of the game itself reflects that in terms of like no plastic parts, that sort of FSC certified paper and whatnot. So can you tell us a little bit more about, like, I guess, what you were thinking of and the kind of like advice and whatnot you were bringing to Matt and the team around like how to build the game in a way that was like reflecting sustainable principles and practices?
Yeah. So I took a life cycle approach to this because that's the best way to get a full picture of how to make the least impactful game, negatively impactful, that is. And really with this life cycle, it's more about the production and the transportation of the game than it is about the use of the game or its afterlife, because once you're using the game, there's not really any negative impact, right? It's not like you're using electricity or anything. So looking at manufacturing and transportation, I did a lot of research into, like, for example, which country, what should the game be manufactured in, and that comes down to like the electricity, or the source of their electricity. So are they mainly using coal power plants versus solar? And then also what route or how would they get to the US or wherever they're just, mainly distributing the game. So if it's, for example, coming from China to the West Coast and they're taking a barge versus like if you'd have to travel from Europe to get to the East Coast and then you still have to go all the way to the West Coast using trucks. So anyway, just looking at the whole picture of it, and I really got into the details of it because I was a student at the time. So yeah.
So you were actually sourcing out factories and getting quotes from factories and finding that background on each one, doing the research on each one?
To the extent that I could, yes. Yeah.
That's
at
really
least to a couple factories anyway.
Where'd you end up going with? What country was the factory in?
I believe they ended up I'm sorry. I remember giving advice at some point and then like walked away. But I believe they went with China. Is that correct?
Yeah, for the for most of the games that are labeled Daybreak, they are manufactured in China. There's a German version sold as E-Mission, so E-mission, like electrical mission.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
That name went over great in Germany. We're just like, what, you're gonna call it emissions? And they're like, no, E-mission. So yeah. Anyway, that is actually manufactured in Europe. So.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, wow.
Right. And I've always been curious to what extent transportation, like what percentage of the impact is around, comes from the environmental impact, comes from the transport from those places.
Sure.
Is that do you have any idea like what percentage of the impact comes from that, Ruth? I'm really curious.
I don't have a percentage at the top of my head. It really depends on.
Yeah, I'm just kind of like curious about like order of magnitude. Is that?
Yeah, it
can
be kind of huge. I think.
Yeah.
Like larger than you'd think, I guess.
Yeah.
I want to say like 25%, but I'm kind of just throwing that out there as a total guess.
Okay.
But that's great that there's 2 sources of production because that just means that they have less distance to travel. So that's
For sure.
in terms of
Yeah, so the German partner, Schmidt-Spiel, was very much on board with the mission behind the game, and really bought into it, and did all the manufacturing locally for that reason.
Oh, that's rad. So it's not only just like manufactured in Europe; it is like local to wherever that game.
I think it's in Europe. I think it's somewhere in Europe. I
okay,
can't
you mean
remember
local
the
investments,
exact.
okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's terribly far, but
Yeah,
I think right.
that's really cool. That does make sense, especially if transportation is, as you said, Ruth, larger than you would expect. I can imagine, especially if you're thinking about shipping from China to the EU, that is going to be either a tremendously long shipping journey or a
Yeah.
huge like aviation toll.
I would say I think CMYK would have manufactured the game in the United States if that was even a viable option, but it is absolutely not viable to make a product like this right now.
Yeah,
It is 100% not viable.
Is it not viable from
currently.
a like financial perspective or like
The game would cost about 5 times as much. I bet Korby could speak to this better than I could.
It's difficult, Syris. It's difficult to even get a quote from a U.S. manufacturer. You send off a request for a quote to a Chinese factory and you get something back in 48 hours. U.S. factories, it can take weeks, and that's not a good sign before even looking at the price tag. So I have been to Shanghai. I've toured 8 factories. I was with Funko Games and Force Present Creative for 8 years, and in 2017 I got to go tour the factories, and we will not catch up to China. That's a fight that we should. That's a very retro thing for us to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. It's just not going to happen. It was kind of stunning what I saw. It was a very emotional trip. You think visiting factories would be like, that doesn't sound like fun. No, it was very eye-opening. The people that work in the factories literally live in houses right outside the factory. It was kind of stunning, the amount of work that was going on. It's kind of emotional seeing the games that I worked on literally rolling off a factory and seeing that there's 30 people that take it to make it. It was a very eye-opening trip for sure. But US is very hard. It's just very hard. Matt, what are you working on now?
I've got about 6
What's
games.
next?
6 games in the pipeline right now.
Oh my God.
One of them is a dexterity game, and we're trying to figure out how to do that in a responsible way. So actually recently switched publishers, so we're not going to be rolling that out in plastic, which makes me very happy. It's either going to be in wood or rewood, which is like I think a pulped wood kind of product with a binder. Anyway, I'm looking into that right now. So I'm very excited about the fact that we're moving away from plastics on that one. The other ones are keeping me very busy. As you know, I can't always talk about these things, but
right, yeah, as much as you can talk about them. Well, Matt, Ruth, Syris, thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it.